Hey everybody, Seth here. Super excited to continue working on my painting today. I'm glad you guys are hopefully going to tune in and join us a little bit. Really been working on this a little bit today. Got some work done on some of the feet, so you can kind of see here. I'll show you a little bit. Got a lot of the work done on both of the feet here with the value scale. I do have some work I'm going to work on up here in the pant legs, so I'm going to be doing some work here through the pant legs. I'm also trying out some of the new lapel mic here, so hoping that we've got that going fairly well. But thanks for jumping in. Thanks for joining me. If you haven't seen any of the painting, I'll probably give a nice big look here in just a little bit, but you can see the feet and the chiaroscuro and the shading that I've got going on that. So super glad for you guys to join me. Going to start painting here. I've already got my raw umber and my white mixed in for my underpainting. And so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Any comments or anything like that. But you're going to see that I'm just going to kind of get going to work on the pants. I'm going to work on this section of the pants, some of the darker values, and then kind of work my way up, maybe even start building some of that texture on these pant legs. So right now it's a 30 by 40 canvas is what I'm working on. That's the size that I've got. And I've gone ahead and done my yellow ochre wash, and I'm working through some of the skin tones and flesh tones. So if you have any questions, let me know, but I'm just going to kind of get painting here. Sharing some of the information, testing out the new system. If you want to take a look, you can kind of see that I've got a smaller palette right now of my oil paints, and I'm just mixing up all my different values and kind of going through that in that fashion. So just going to kind of get working, get some painting going. I've added some linseed oil to my mix, kind of thinning those up a little bit, but I'm going to start dropping in some of my darker values. And I also have my maul stick, which if you don't know what a maul stick is, maul sticks are great. They help you rest your hand and not have to place your hand on the painting or anywhere like that. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'll try to check them as I go. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and just start dropping in some of these darker values on this paint here and kind of get going on these pants. This will be a relatively slow process with these pants. They are going to be a challenge for sure, but I'm excited to tackle them. Really excited to see where these pant legs go, but I think the feet turned out pretty good. Really pretty excited about how the feet look, especially that left big toe. If you look at this big toe here, I absolutely love the form that came out on that. She's got a little bit of a heavy rise there. I may try to lower that down a little bit, but all in all, I think it turned out pretty good, pretty strong. So I'm just going to kind of work through some of this here and start building up some of these textures and layers and see how this kind of comes together from these pants. These pants are heavy textured. They're almost like the old school 1980s denim. So they're going to be a lot of different values and shades. They're going to have to kind of come to life in these guys. So we'll see how that goes. Hope everybody's having a great day today. It's kind of dark, cold, and dreary here a little bit in Louisville, Kentucky, which is not always the most fun, but hopefully we'll get some better weather soon, or at least some true winter weather, I guess. I miss nice, good, cold winter weather. Spent a few years up in the mountains. Had some life experiences and lots of snow. But hopefully you guys are all having a great day today and things are going well for you. Thanks for jumping in, Michelle. This is our third time going live. We've got some systems in place and getting some things figured out, getting to share a little bit with some people. It's been a fun experience for sure. Hopefully you like it. Let me know if you like the 2-camera system setup that we've kind of got going. I think it works pretty well. I think it serves its purpose pretty nicely. And thanks for jumping in. Figure if we got a little bit of a chance to share some of this, we'll share some of this out. But as you can see, this texture of these pants, it's going to be a challenge. So this is our oil painting, Michelle, and so this is what we've been working on. The last couple of streams we've been doing this. I walked them through. We did the first bit of the face, and this is the grisaille. So if you're just joining us, this is our underpainting, or what's known as a grisaille, and it just basically it's establishing all the values of the painting, and I'm using raw umber and white, titanium white, as my two primary mixes. And so this is getting me all my values. So this is allowing me to get a lot of the values that I have, and then I'll come back in. So the beauty of oils is that it allows me to build up in layers. And so this grisaille is really the first layer, even though I've done the yellow ochre wash, so that way I'm not working on a white back canvas. The yellow grisaille gives me a nice kind of neutral, and I personally really like how the yellow makes it kind of glow. It illuminates the underpainting a lot, and it shines through, and I really like how that feels. So I usually use a yellow ochre. Sometimes I'll use a raw sienna wash, but these are oils, and so I'm going to work on this first layer, really build up this first layer, and then after this whole painting's covered in this raw umber and white, you'll see that we'll come back in on top with our colors. And so we'll finish up with all of our different flesh tones, all of our different pants. These pants are going to be blue. We've got all the floor. So really this is going to be almost like a quote unquote black and white kind of grayscale painting, even though it's browns and whites, tints and shades of that. We'll come back on later and add those textures in and really get that going. So I'm not trying to focus too terribly much on the details. I mean, I obviously it's detailed, but I'm going to continue to try to stay somewhat painterly with it, stay relatively loose with it, and then I can continue to add those details as I go. Now, I start out pretty detailed because I like a good solid underdrawing, but as this progresses, it'll hopefully tighten up as I keep going. And here in just a minute, maybe I'll move the camera around a little bit and show you guys a little bit of where the painting's at. Got some work done on it. I think, it was great getting everybody to jump in the other day when you guys jumped in, and we got a lot of feedback, a lot of really good questions, which I really liked. I really appreciate all the questions. We had a whole bunch from some of our existing students here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. We had some from people from across the country in different parts that aren't able to attend here, so they get a chance to kind of see some of the work that's being done. If you were on here the other days, you'll notice that I've shifted the canvas down entirely and really focusing on this bottom half now. And then I'm going to bounce around. If you remember from the previous sessions, I like to bounce around a little bit because I want to make sure that I get good values all over the canvas. So I may start down here, but then I may move up and move across, and I'll add different textures as we work along. So thanks for jumping in, guys. Let me know if you have any thoughts or questions or anything like that. Gonna work through this here. These pants are going to be incredibly difficult for me. But again, I'm going to start with the basic shapes. If you've taken any of the classes here, it's kind of the same kind of concept. Start, break it down, tackle what you can tackle, start with those basic shapes, and then work from there. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with those basic forms and shapes, and then I'm going to find a way to kind of continue to add, and I'll keep adding. And here, let me go ahead and show you guys. So you guys, some of you who've jumped on, I don't believe have seen the full painting. So I'm going to, pardon my hand here, but I'm going to show you guys the entire painting here. So you guys can see, here's the feet. Let me move this out of the way. So there's the feet, but this is 30 inches by 40 inches. So it's a pretty good size. It's a pretty healthy piece. And you guys can see that those feet look pretty solid, I think, from there. And then if you want to see up here, here's the face. Here's what we've got going on. And so I've gotten quite a bit done on the face, on the flesh tones and everything that's going on. And so I'm kind of working my way back down and around, really kind of finding my way through it. And then if we get really far away, you guys can see how large this piece really is. So you guys can see that that piece is nice and big. And so it is going to take me a little bit of time, but I'm pretty excited about it. Hopefully you guys like so far where it's going. And I'm really glad that we found a way to get you guys to share in this journey from different parts of the country and from different locations. So super appreciative of everybody jumping in. Well, thank you. Yes, thanks. The details, I think, really add to it. Michelle, I really appreciate the feedback. And hopefully, especially, it's kind of tough, I think, sometimes to see it on a digital platform like this. But man, when you get in, hopefully you get to see it in person. I think you're going to be blown away by it. And I think you'll really think it pops and it stands out. But again, this is just the first layer. You know, you got to trust it. And the first day that we did this and went live, I was not really happy. If some of you were watching, I was not really happy with the way that her right eye turned out. And so I had to come in and rework it. And that's the beauty. I tell all my students, it's okay. We're gonna work through things. We're gonna find different ways to improve. We're gonna work through it. And a lot of it's just practice. But some of it is you just gotta, sit down and process it. Really figure out, okay, what do I need to work on with this? And I'm constantly learning. I'm always kind of growing and working and going through it. And you find ways to really push yourself. And this painting, I was telling our first viewers a couple days ago, guys, this painting is intimidating. It's intimidating to me. It's not only is it somebody I know, being my daughter, but it's also a challenge. It's a very large oil painting. It's large in size. It's also going to be pretty detailed. It's got a ton of different textures, ranging from her sweater that she has to the flesh tones, to the wood floors, and even carpet and couches. So yeah, this piece is going to be a little daunting, but I also think it's a great opportunity for me to showcase to the students here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio the process that I go through, and so they get to experience some of that. When we're doing demos and when we're doing quick lessons, it's often hard, I think, to showcase them the full process. And so this gives me a chance to kind of take them through the entire process, and I'm grateful for that. We got a question from Michelle. Do you feel like the larger size paintings are more difficult or easier than smaller ones? Gosh, I don't know. I think I think more so it's the subject matter for me. That's what I think. I don't think larger is always more challenging. I think it's usually going to be a little bit more about the subject matter and how comfortable I am with that subject matter. And so I think that it's, I don't know if size really matters. I've done larger pieces that were very quick, very fast. If you saw the My Old Kentucky Home series, I did a white horse that I felt like I went through that really quickly. And that was a large, I want to say 48 by 48 inches. That piece was very quick. It flowed. It just kind of came out. And then I've done smaller pieces where, boy, were they challenges. So I don't know if necessarily size is there. I think size tends to intimidate a lot of people, Michelle. I think that's a great question. I think size intimidates a lot of people. But then again, people get intimidated with a blank page in a sketchbook and they go, oh my gosh, I've got blank page syndrome. I don't know where to start. I don't want to ruin this page. I don't want to ruin the sketchbook. So I think any blank canvas can be intimidating, but size, I don't know if larger makes it more challenging. I think a lot of times it's just subject matter. But that's a great question. Thank you for asking that, Michelle. I really appreciate the question. I do think that in likenesses, in portraiture, sometimes smaller is harder because you don't have the same amount of real estate, you don't have the same amount of space to really hone in on those details. So, I think a larger piece in portrait work or expressive work tends to be a little bit easier because you have more room to find all those individual details. But yeah, thanks for the question. Appreciate it. We've got our wonderful theater classes going on upstairs at the moment. So if you see some people walk past, that's what they're doing. Move the mall stick so you guys can kind of see. So again, I worked on this foot the other day when we were live, and this is the second foot that I did earlier in the day today. And as you can tell, I'm kind of working upwards here. I want to find some of these values on these pant legs so that it just doesn't feel like floating. It doesn't feel like it's a floating leg, if you will. Hey, Regina, great to see you. Thanks for jumping in. Appreciate you taking a look. So yes, so this piece is from a photo that I took. If you've listened to the other ones, I'm not a photographer. I don't consider myself to be a photographer, but I happened to take a photo of my daughter that I thought was brilliant. Not because I took it, but just because it captured so much of her persona. It captured her ferocity and just just a lot of different elements about her. And so I am working on this one from a reference photo that I took of her. And what I've done, though, I will kind of talk through this because I think that's a great question, Regina. Thanks for asking. A lot of times what I do is I'll have my reference photo, but my mentor, Alvarez, and one of the great professors mentioned that you have to be better than your reference. And so even though I have the reference photo, I've already painted it once in my mind, and now I'm painting it again in the drawing, in the phase of the drawing. So I've already done all these little things here. If you can really see kind of these notes, and let me see if I can get this a little bit closer for you. So as you can see, these little notes, I've already made these hints and these notes of areas of value that I want to have, creases, folds, darker values, and it's pretty much all over the entire painting. You can even see it over here. If you look at this molding on the floor, I have the cast shadow marked off. I have some notes marked off of different values and tints. So even though I am working from a reference photo, Regina, I'm working through the painting kind of organically, if that makes sense. Every now and then I'll look back at my photo and pull some reference and information from it. I've got it off to the side over here that I can glance at, but I don't want to just create a photo that's photorealistic. I want to create something that's painterly. So I allow myself to be flexible with that, if that makes sense. But yes, I am working from a reference photo, and I hope that I kind of create my own energy with it while still maintaining her likeness and having some realism to it so that it holds weight and holds it. But a lot of other artists, they take it and they run with it and they go a little bit further than even I can. So, but I'm working through it, and I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it's looking really good so far. Thank you for the question, Regina. That's awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, and again, to your point, yes, it is a reference photo, but I quote unquote want to be better than the photo, right? I have the photo. I have an actual picture that I can reference, and it looks just like her, and it's perfect, and it's captured that moment. So how do I take this photo that I love and then turn it into a painting, right? And a lot of that is through the brushwork or through the textures or the energy that you get in the painting. Because if I just wanted it as it was, I would leave it there. I would just leave it as a photo. I would print off that photo and have a print of it, which I do. But I wanted to paint it, and I think the painting side comes from the energy that you can create with it, the emotion that you can put into it, and then obviously you're creating something slightly different than what that photo is. And I think that's the beauty of a piece like this. But no, thank you. Tough questions, very good stuff. Thank you guys. You guys are amazing. And boy, these folds and these stitch work, this is, again, where you just sometimes just let the brush, you'll be surprised about when the brush can kind of dance across and just kind of create these nice little movements. It'll create these nice little textures. It'll give you that energy that you're looking for on that texture of the pant leg and some of the other elements. But right now, working through it, this is going to be a challenging piece. One of the things I talked through the other day that I thought a couple of people had some good questions about it is I am using a smaller brush right now. However, when I shift over to other areas, you will see me shift over to a bigger brush because you want the brush to create different textures, different energy across the canvas. And right now, this is creating those same kind of marks. So I do want to change up some of my brushes here in a little bit and get some of that kind of going. But as of right now, this brush is working pretty nicely for these folds, so I'm going to stick with it. It's treating me pretty good. I hope everybody here in the Louisville area, the surrounding Midwest, is staying warm. It is getting chilly. We are a few few short weeks away from Christmas, and I hope everybody's excited for it. Just really putting in some of these marks, creating some of these marks. You'll notice that I'm being less focused on the detail on these pants and just creating a lot of that energy. Now, I know where my folds are. I know where the shapes are, right? I've broken it down into my shapes. But I'm going to let this whole pant leg needs to have a different feel than the flesh of the feet and the flesh of the rest of the piece. And so hopefully if I bring this camera out a little bit, you guys can see that hopefully there's beginning to be a little bit of a different texture with that. And as I continue to work on this, you'll see that it'll hopefully come together and really be different. You'll hear me tell my students a lot to loosen up with their brush. Don't get so down in here all the time, really, really close. Get your hand a little bit further away. Let that brush do the work. Let it kind of glide across. And so on some of these bigger, more gestural pant leg parts, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take my own coaching and teaching advice and really let that kind of come through. Sometimes just some great little things happen that you didn't even anticipate when that paint just kind of mixes right on in there. If you've been on any of the other previous sessions, you'll know that I make a lot of noises when I paint. I like to resonate with that brush. That brush, you can hear it across the canvas, and I think that's great. And just like that. So this piece, I had somebody ask me the other day, how long did it take me to draw out this canvas? And I kind of describe it as this. I used a partial grid system to draw out this canvas. And the partial grid I primarily used for the likeness of the face. But I free drew everything else. So I hand drew everything else, didn't trace anything. But I used a grid to help me make sure that I kept the likeness there. I think portraits are really hard. Personally for me, but I think portraits are even harder of people that you know and that you have a relationship with, because you have these visions of who they are and what their face should look like. And I think that makes it really challenging, because sometimes no matter how much you get the likeness, it's not them, because you know them so well. And so a lot of times, self-portraits are tough. I made one of our drawing classes here. Our young artists create self-portraits. And boy, did they do an amazing job. Our Drawing 101 class for young artists, they did an exceptional job with these drawings. But you could tell it was tough for them, because they know what they look like. They see themselves in the mirrors every day. They see what they, how they interact, how their hair looks. And for them, I think it was challenging to, get that likeness and not see it exactly that way. But when you draw other people, a lot of times you find those nuances and you can capture a lot of the elements that makes that person unique. And since you're not so emotionally connected to them, you're able to really emphasize those, and that makes that person, seem more accurate. The painting or the drawing seem more accurate. And that's just kind of my thoughts on it. I think it's really tough to draw people that you know or paint people that you know. But it's also a lot of fun, because when you get it right and you do it well, boy, does it feel good. It's such a big accomplishment when you feel like, yep, I nailed it. That was the look. That was the expression. Boy, I captured, her likeness, his likeness. And it's incredibly rewarding when you do get it right. And that's kind of, I feel like I'm pretty close. I showed not too long ago, I took the camera and I showed upwards of the portrait part, the face of my daughter here. And I feel like I'm pretty close on it. I feel like I've got a pretty good take on what she's looking like, but it's not there yet. I'm going to have to keep working on it. I'm going to have to keep reworking it. I'm going to have to keep going on it, because the likeness is not exactly what I want. And so I've got to keep going through that, to keep pushing through that. And it's a process. I tell almost all of my students, don't get frustrated. It's a learning experience. You're learning. Keep pushing. And sometimes you got to step away. Sometimes the painting or the piece, the drawing isn't going the way that you want it, but that's okay. Do it again. The next one tends to be even better. And so sometimes it's really helpful and beneficial to come back in and rework that piece because it's better than you initially thought it could be. And so I will keep reworking this guy, or I shouldn't say this guy, this painting until it gets to where it needs to be. Sometimes that takes a while. But I'm really glad you're along for the journey. Again, I'm probably going to work for just a little bit over an hour or so, get some work on this. So thank you for joining. Again, please feel free to ask questions. Ask questions about technique, ask questions about the process. If I can answer it, I will. And again, keep in mind, there's so many different ways to work. There's so many different amazing artists out there that do this kind of work. It's a phenomenal community, and that's what we want to build here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. Is we really want to build the sense of artistic community where people can share, people can watch and engage. And so far, I think we've done a phenomenal job of that. I've been very, very pleased with some of the students that we've had and some of the work that's been done. It's been an exceptional journey in these first few weeks. And for everybody that's come, everybody that's taken a look toward the facility, taken a class, taken an exploration, we can't thank you enough. We're so grateful for all of your engagement, all of your exciting for the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. This has been a life dream and a journey, and we're so glad that we get to share it with you guys. And I'm excited about the new way of sharing it with all of you too. We've had a number of people reach out and say, look, I'm not local. I can't take classes. I'm not able to be there in person. Do you mind sharing a little bit? And so myself and Chad Nuss, our other instructor, he's going to jump in at some points and share some of his work and really get some of that going. I think it's a fun process for sure. Again, this is oil. I've got a little bit of linseed. I'm working a little bit thicker than maybe I would on these pants, but I like the texture that it's getting. It's creating a completely different texture over the flesh down there on the feet and her face. So I'm pretty happy with that so far, that texture build up. I have used a little bit of linseed. So for those that are technical, I have used a little bit of linseed oil to loosen it up a little bit. I don't typically use a ton of paint thinner, although at times I will, especially on the underpainting in the smaller areas. I'm sorry, in the beginning stages, I'll use some to thin that out and get some washes in there. But right now, this grisaille is starting to come together, I think. And I really value immensely an underpainting. It's a pain. A lot of people go, why are you painting the painting twice? Well, because the first time through, it gives me a chance to really figure it out. And then that second time, if I go with glazes on top, or if I put a more alla prima kind of heavier approach in that second go, I still feel like I've already done the painting, and it just goes so much quicker for me, and it adds so much more depth. I think it just makes the piece really kind of stand out and pop. And so hopefully you're starting to see these pants kind of come to life here. And as I work, I notice things that I don't like, so I go back in and I keep working it. So for instance, one of the things that I'm not a big fan of is right here in this area. I'll bring the camera a little bit closer. So I'm not the biggest fan right here in this area because it's kind of flattened down on me. I feel like it's drooping down. It's drooping. It's kind of sagging. So I've got to find a way. I want to crisp that up. I want to make that a little bit more crisp, a little bit more hard edge, because I don't like how that's sagging. So I'm going to come back in. I'm going to rework that. In fact, I think I'm pretty confident I know exactly what's happening there. And so I'm going to come back in and work some of that out. I think it was the curvature there. Was not a fan of that. How that curve just softened that up tremendously. And I think there's some deeper, darker values there. So again, I'm going to grab some more of my raw umber and darken some of that up. And then sometimes it's good to just let a spot sit, let it sit, and then come back to it too. Walk away. If you've taken a class, I hope maybe some of my students are on, or if they jump on later, I'll ask the question and they can tell me. If you've taken a class of mine, if you've been a part of one of my classes, I tell every student to get away from their piece. Step away, get some distance. If you're constantly just up here, right here on the nose of it, and you're not getting away from it, you're not going to get a true look and feel of what that piece is turning out to be, because you're so close to it. You got to step away. You got to look at it from a distance. And so sometimes you just got to step back, which I think is great. Just like that. Definitely feel like that now that's not drooping as much as it was. I think it's definitely significantly stronger now. And so I'm coming back in and just adding in some of these little highlights on these creases here. Oh man, I hope you guys can see that fairly well. Oh my gosh, what an amazing question, Michelle. That is such a tough one. Yes, there are a ton. Obviously, the classics. I think the old masters are amazing. Da Vinci, Michelangelo, all of them. But even the Impressionists and the Post-Impressionists. Van Gogh's had a huge effect on the modern world. And I've been recently reading the Letters of Van Gogh, thanks to Chad Nuss, and those have been wildly inspirational, just absolutely phenomenal. But there's a gentleman online that I follow. Again, I talked about this yesterday, Michelle, and that's a great question, which is the world of art is smaller now. You have a wonderful chance to get to meet and to get to see and follow these other artists, kind of like what we're doing right now, where you get to see some of the work that's being done. And there's a gentleman who does these beautiful nostalgic pieces. I think his name is Will Rochefort Art. If somebody could check that for me and pull that up, Will Rochefort Art. He does these beautiful, almost Norman Rockwell. Norman Rockwell was obviously a huge influence for me because he was so narrative. He was so story driven. And that's one of the reasons I like this piece, is I feel like it's got a story within it, right? It's not just a portrait. There's a narrative behind it. There's that moment of her childhood innocence and, kind of being this preteen, losing that adolescence to a certain extent. And so I really, really love Norman Rockwell. I think he was an illustrator, but a painter, and he combined them beautifully. And obviously my training was in illustration and then some sequential art as well for my master's. But Will Rochefort Art, if you look him up, and I'm probably butchering his name, and I apologize, sir, if you ever hear this video, I am so sorry to butcher your name. But your work is stunning, and I'm constantly inspired by your work and his techniques. He has so many videos that you can follow online and take a look. His style is brilliant, and I'd say that in the modern world, he's a big influence on me, Michelle. He's somebody who really I take a lot of inspiration from, and he's great. And so yeah, if you're ever looking to follow somebody, you can follow him. I think on Instagram. I think he's got a YouTube channel. He's spectacular, and you will definitely learn a lot from him. Thank you for the question. That's awesome. What wonderful questions. Thank you. Dropping in some of these textures here. Hopefully you guys can still see that okay. I think the logo is kind of getting in the way there. I'm going to shift this over. So you can see it's not a fast process, but it's not a slow process either. What do you guys think, if you're on, what do you guys think of that texture on that pant? Is it really kind of coming through, or am I losing it? Hopefully it's coming through for you guys, and you guys get that crinkly. I don't know how to describe it. Maybe somebody on here knows what they're called. They're denim jeans, but they're kind of they're not acid washed, but they're that like 80s crinkle kind of jean. And so I'm really trying to get that texture here, so that when I come back in later and I add on those tints and shades of blue for my second layer, third layer, that it really has that feeling to it. So it's not a fast process necessarily, but I personally think I'm getting some pretty quick coverage on these pants. The crinkle texture is coming through. All right. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that. So her feet at this point, are completed with the underpainting. So the underpainting on the feet, Regina, that's another great question. The feet at this stage are probably done. The chiaroscuro, or the shading, the molding, that is probably done at this point, but I will constantly be going back in and working. So some of these areas, oops, sorry about that. Some of these areas that you can see right around in here, I may soften some of those up. I feel like that's a pretty heavy bulge there. I'm going to soften that transition. In fact, let me see if I can do that now, because now you've got me thinking about it. But this curvature here is just a little bit too harsh for me, I think. And so I'm going to come in and soften that up and really take some of that down just a little bit like that. So what you'll find, Regina, is yes, the feet are quote unquote finished for now for this first layer, but I'm going to become obsessed with them and I'm going to keep touching them up, because as I bounce around from section and section and section of the painting, I'll come back to those other sections. And ultimately I have to get to a point where the underpainting, I feel like I'm satisfied with the underpainting. Now it's time to apply chroma. It's time to apply color. And so I'm going to continue to work those things. Oh, so yeah, you saw that area as well. And the contrast of the camera is a little bit harsher. When you see this in person, it's a little bit softer, right? You'll see some areas that soften up. So I just finished laying in those forms, those shapes, those values. And then as I continue to work the piece, I'll keep coming back. I'll keep coming back. I'll keep coming back. But ultimately, then you have to get to a point where you go, okay, it's time to add chroma. It's time to add on that glaze and start putting in some pigment, some values that I want to achieve for those colors. Wow, phenomenal question. You guys are great. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Regina. You guys are amazing. I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Thank you for joining, taking a little bit of time out of your day to join in on this painting session. Here come some of the kiddos. So just working through this painting, working. And so what I may shift now is I may shift over to this left-hand side so that I can keep some kind of consistency, but these are some darker values here. And these pant legs are going to take quite some time, but I'm going to continue to work on it. I've already made my notes, so I know I have my reference photo, right? But I know I have some notes, and I've studied this painting. I've studied the picture, and I have an idea of certain elements. So to your point, Regina, about one of your earlier questions, yes, I have that reference photo, and I am going to glance at it and look at it, but I'm not going to rely solely on that. And I want to keep my mind kind of fresh into what I'm working on and how I'm building it out. Think of it kind of like sculpture, right? I'm sculpting it through. And again, I personally love these little notes. I leave myself little notes, typically of my darker areas, my darker values. And then I start there and then kind of work my way out. But that's not always true. Sometimes I do it a little bit different. But we're going to work through this guy, this little edge here, just like that. Right like that. We get a little bit of an overlap of these pants here. Create that little bit of a darker value. Notice how I'm just letting that paint kind of bounce around. Just kind of letting it go. Come back in. Really work some of these creases. I like these creases that these pants get. And so I'll come back in and drag some white through there, let it kind of naturally wet on wet kind of just pull through some of those elements. And once I get those values down, then I'll come back on top with some more detail. But again, everybody works different. I don't think there's any one specific way that you have to work. There's techniques that can be taught. There's certain methodologies that are important. With oil painting, one of the big methodologies is typically considered, fat over lean. You got to really be conscious of how the drying of the paint is going to be applied there. But then you have other elements like alla prima. In our 2-hour exploration sessions, we do a lot of alla prima painting because we're able to complete a piece in 2 hours, right? We're able to go very quickly through that process. And so that's really, really interesting to me. Michelle had asked, anybody that I follow, and if you look at some of these other painters, especially with the unique nature of the internet today, you're able to see how everybody works if they're willing to share it. And it's absolutely brilliant. It's brilliant to see how people kind of come to their own work and find out their own methods. And I'm very grateful for that. And I think a lot of students are grateful for that as well. So now this left-hand side really lightens up. We get a whole light side over here. So you're going to see me put some big, bold values. Get some nice, big, bold values here. Just really pull those through. Let them be a little bit painterly. Because again, close up you don't get the full form or effect of it. But once you step away, when you step away and you look at it, all those little brush marks disappear. And that full form, whatever it is, that full form of that pant leg all of a sudden just pops. And you just go, wow, I didn't see that coming. And I think that's really great. That's one of the best parts about painting, is when you put that one brush stroke down and you put that one tree in, or you make that one mark, and then all of a sudden you just go, yep, that was it. And I think that's one of the most rewarding things for me as an instructor, is watching a student have that moment. It's like the golf shot, right? If you're a golfer, it's that one golf shot that keeps you coming back. Sometimes it's just that one brush stroke that just makes you come back for more. You're just blown away by it, and you're just like, yep, that's it. I'm going to be painting for the rest of my life, because boy, was this, you're creating. And I think we're called to be creators. We're meant to be creators, and there's many artists that talk about it. I wish Chad was here. He would be able to tell me. I think it's Makoto Fujimura, and I apologize if I'm butchering that name, but he has a brilliant book about being called to create, and how it's so satisfying and intrinsic of us to want to create. And I think there's just so much reward. And as a teacher, as a professor or instructor, when you see somebody achieve that, it's so gratifying, because you can see it change their life. And I'm not being overly dramatic. I'm being very genuine. Art changes people's lives. And if you haven't painted, if you haven't drawn in a while, if you haven't gotten out there, if you haven't given it a shot, don't be scared. Art is for everybody. And you need to get out there. You need to go and paint. You need to create. Not only does it help, I was at a senior living facility, and it was amazing to talk to these individuals. I talked about it yesterday, but it's playing in my mind over and over and over. Art creates cognitive ability. It's important. We talk about it in the youth. We talk about in children needing the arts to increase their brain function. There's so many studies that prove that the visual arts, theater arts, like the musical arts, all of these things increase cognitive ability. And that's not just in young children. That's in adults as well. And you should. It creates happiness and joy. It engages your mind. Everybody should paint. Everyone should draw. Everyone should have a chance. Whether you think it, quote unquote, looks good or not, that's okay. You should have an experience. You should get engaged with it. Give it a go. And obviously that's one of the reasons we built the Visual Arts Academy and Studio, was so that people would have a place to come and to feel comfortable and to be engaged and to be able to create. So if you haven't come and check us out, 11702 Main Street here in Louisville, Kentucky, come and take a look at us. Give us a chance. Give yourself a chance. Not even give us a chance. Give yourself a chance as a creator. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by what you're able to do. I think a lot of people don't even know what they're able to create. And if I had a dime for every person that's come in here and said, Seth, I just can't paint. I'm just not a painter. I thought I could when I was a kid, and then I kind of got into work and my career, and I just haven't done it. Oh man, you will be blown away. You will be shocked by what you're able to do. And it happens a lot. So don't delay. Give yourself a shot. Come and paint with us. Come and draw with us. You'll be glad you did. You'll be much happier. You'll be glad. Sorry for that little tangent there, guys, but I believe it's for everybody's benefit. I'm going to come in on this seam now. I've got my dark values here, and I'm going to work some of these notes here with these darker tones and kind of work around those. Let that brush kind of really get in there, working that canvas. If you haven't joined us before, thank you for joining. We really appreciate you guys taking a watch of the live stream of the painting session here. Oh, wow, what a compliment. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Margaret. Oh my gosh. It's such a joy to have you in here taking a look at this painting and watching some of it. Thank you so much. I don't know if you can tell on camera or not, but I'm blushing a little bit because of your comment. Thank you, thank you. Yes, absolutely. So I guess I'm working out of the screens. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate you giving me a nod there. So here's where we're getting to. So all I'm doing is kind of working my way upwards, keeping it grounded. And part of the reason I'm doing that is because the values in these pants get lighter as I progress up. So I'm working on this seam here because the seam is the darkest part of the pant that I have. And then I'm going to work around that. Now, obviously on this inside part of this leg, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but this inside part of the leg is going to be a little bit darker in my values. And I've mixed up my grayscales, right? Using, again, if you've just joined us, I'm using raw umber and white for my grisaille, or what's called working through an underpainting. Oh, is that Patricia again? Hey, Patricia, great to see you. You're between you and everybody else, I think I might be fully red here. But thank you guys so much. Yeah, you can see, I guess, if you haven't taken a look, here's the feet so far with the pants that I'm working on. So we're getting there, Patricia. We're getting there. Slow but steady, right? Like I said, slow but steady. And I wish you could have seen some of the earlier works with this, because I've had to rework it. We talk a lot about that with watercolor. It's hard to rework something in watercolor because of the layering process and the medium that it is. The good news with oils is I can rework some of it. And so you'll find that I've been working through some of these different textures, some of these pants. Next time you're in the studio, Patricia, you got to come by and see this. I think it's even more, I think it's got even more texture in person. But thanks for jumping on. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the compliment. Thank you. You're way too kind. But what you're going to notice is, so I talk a lot about the value scale and creating a value, because what we're working on now is the grisaille. And what the goal of this, as I work through this, I'm going to try to explain it, and it's tough to do both at the same time, but I'm going to try. The goal with this is if you take chroma, color, right, what we tend to call color, if you take chroma out, we're left with value. We're left with those value tones. And those values are what give us form. It's what takes something from two-dimensional shape into three-dimensional form. We also call that chiaroscuro, or the molding, the shaping, the sculpting of those values. And so what we do with this underpainting is it's forcing me to not just look at it at color. Oh, this is blue, or that's a blue, or that's a shade of blue, or there's some violet, or whatever colors are mixed in that blue, some green, some reds. It's allowing me to really hone in on what are the values. What are the values that make this pop? And then when I come back in and mix in my colors, my chroma, I'm going to have, in my opinion, hopefully, a much stronger piece, because I've really focused on those values. And then it's easy to come in with either a glaze or a thicker color of a pigment and layer that on top. But that's what we're working on. That's what we're doing. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I did not want to do this. I wanted to go straight in and not do the underpainting. But after discussing with a couple of the other artists, with talking with Thomas, when talking with Chad, they motivated me and they pushed me. And they said, no, take your time. You don't have a time limit on this piece. Really focus on getting it really focus on getting it correct and do it the right way. And so they said, no, you got to do the underpainting, Seth. And I'm so glad I listened to them. This is why that art community is so important, right, Patricia? You and I talk about this. This is why it's so important to have people to paint with. This is why it's important to come and be a part of a community, because they motivate you and encourage you. If you guys could see some of Patricia's work, you'd be blown away by these pieces that she brings in and goes, these aren't any good. These aren't any good. I got frustrated with this. I got frustrated with that. And I'm sitting there going, man, look at these wonderful pieces that you've accomplished. Can we get better in some areas? Yes. But if you're not part of that community, you don't know that you're doing things well. You don't know that you're achieving some goals. You're striving forward. So I encourage you, or in my case, you're not being motivated by other artists to do things the right way. So I encourage you to be a part of a community, find other friends that paint, and yes, they would, Patricia. You're so funny. Yes, they would. But thank you guys, everybody, for motivating and pushing. It's wonderful. I think we got another question from Michelle here. This is silly, but as a beginner, if you were doing a painting in grayscale, would you still do the underpainting? Well, so in that point, you would probably have a wash, right? You probably would want to do your yellow ochre wash or a gray tone wash. You want to probably not just work straight on white, because if you're doing a grayscale, a true black and white, a true grayscale, you're going to probably do your first layer in that, and you're not going to come back on top. So no, you would not probably come in with an underpainting, because your underpainting is that. What you may find, though, is to work on, instead of just a white canvas, you may work on a toned canvas. So you would find something of a neutral gray or a lighter gray, and you'd work from that. So that way your middle tone is the canvas itself. If you work on just a white canvas, The white is your lightest light. So when we talk about that in watercolor, where you don't put any pigment is your lightest lights, right? That's why you have to really pre-plan your watercolor paintings, because the white is the paper. You can come in and add some in later, or you can do, and I'm blanking on it now, and I apologize. Oh my gosh. You can do some techniques that will leave those white spaces for you. But in a grayscale painting, you're going to want to add in some light. You're going to want to add in some white. So to answer, that's a long-winded question. It's not a silly question. It's a great question. If you're painting in grayscale, you probably would not be doing your underpainting because your underpainting is in that grayscale. Hopefully that answers your question. But you may end up working it more than you think, right? So you may end up doing more with that grayscale than you realized, and that could be a layer 1, and then come back on top and do layer 2 or layer 3. But it wouldn't technically be an underpainting because there's not much there. Now you could do, this is a good thought though, you could do a much looser wash underpainting. So you could come in and do a grayscale wash, or very loose. In the case with oils, you could thin it out really thin and drop in those layers of those pigments and those values, and then come back on with your thicker. That's where that thick over thin, right, Michelle, which I mentioned earlier. But you could do a thinner wash first as an underpainting in grayscale, and then come back on with your thicker, your fatter pigments and put those on top. So that's a good way to come in and say, establish your values, establish your gray tones, and then come back on and add detail and finish it up. Those are great questions. I want to kind of go back to a comment I think Patricia had made about the patience for such a big project. Well, I think one of the things that I was taught that I think goes a very long way, and I've kind of shared this with you, Patricia, and I've shared it with others as well, is have other shorter projects. If you know you're going to work on something that's going to take a long period of time, don't be afraid to have other projects in the works. So don't be afraid to have something that's shorter. Don't be afraid to do a smaller piece. Come back to it. Find your way back to a bigger piece, or take your time and do a few smaller pieces in between. And I think that helps me with the patience, because even though this piece is larger, I'll come back to it a few times. I will find my way to do other smaller projects, and then do some other larger ones as well. I apologize for the big ding there, guys. Howdy, how are you? Oh yeah, no, absolutely. But no, great questions. Thank you, guys. I think one of the greatest things, it's intimidating, but it's great too, is I used to paint pretty much solely in my basement, in my studio. And I was very fortunate. I felt very honored, very blessed to have an actual painting studio. But it's a whole different beast painting in front of people. As you guys just saw here in the Academy, we have lots of classes going on. We have lots of sessions. We got lots of community members that are coming in and out. And to paint in front of people is incredibly intimidating. It's a challenge, but it's a good challenge. It's like performing. And I really enjoy the fact that we get to perform here at the Academy. Our instructors get to do a lot of really great work. And I'm honored that we have people coming in and engaging with us. And I think it's a blast. Still intimidating, still nerve-wracking, but I'm very grateful that we get to do it. And so you'll see this, again, this left-hand side is going to lighten up a little bit. And so I'm going to work in some lighter value and then kind of massage in some of my other tones to really kind of get that working. If you can see some of this, I'm gonna zoom in on this. If you guys can see, that's incredibly painterly. It's very, 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 very loose. But then as you get further and further away, if I were to take this camera and get really far away, it's going to give you that kind of crinkle effect. But then the beauty of oils is, with it still being wet, I can come in and I can soften some of these areas up and still work them, and I can pick and choose, where do I want it to be super painterly? Where do I want it to soften up? Where do I want it to have that hard edge? And it's a really nice thing to be able to do. And I've enjoyed immensely getting back into oils, which I hadn't worked in some time. Thank you guys so much for all the comments and for engaging. I said this the other day too. I'm probably going to paint for just, I said, not too long ago, but for a little bit. But I'm probably going to paint for another 20, 30 minutes, see how much I can get going on these pants here. And I really appreciate everybody jumping in and joining, all the great comments and questions. Michelle, Margaret, everybody. Thank you guys so much. Patricia, everyone. It's always interesting when you have something to talk through and kind of talk about. I hope you get a chance to come and paint with us. We have our exploration sessions going on this winter. If you've ever thought about painting in oils, come and paint in oils. Loosen some of these guys up here. And we'll have a class that's breaking for session here in just a little bit. So there will be a lot of doorbells ringing. So I'll probably end the live session before that. But we've been painting for a little while now. We've been painting for almost 56 minutes, a little bit longer than that. Getting some really good work dropped in. See, now I'm going to come back in and add some of these little wispy guys. Some of these little folds that just happen here. And again, as Regina asked earlier, she had a great question. I do have a reference photo that I'm using that I took of my daughter, but I'm letting some natural things kind of happen as I paint. I know the energy that I want. I know the style that I want. And I know the texture. And so as I'm working it, I'm pulling from that reference photo, but I'm also letting some natural things kind of happen. Just like that. See, now I've got this left-hand side going right in here, and I want to create some value difference. And so I know this hard edge here is significantly lighter. And so I'm going to come in and drop this in and really start to tie those two pant legs together. Let them interact with each other, see how the values interact. Really start to kind of get some elements there so I can see how they're piggybacking off of each other. Look at that. Love it. Sometimes it's so rewarding. Other times you leave the painting, you're like, man, I just couldn't get anything right today. But sometimes it's amazing. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate the compliment. Appreciate you watching. Thanks for joining us today. Well, guys, I think we're getting close. I'm going to stay on just a little bit longer, work a little bit more on this. Tighten up some of these little stitch marks here. Get some of them going. Look at that. So much fun to paint. Yeah, I think those pant legs, those feet and pant legs are really starting to turn out pretty good. I think we're getting some good texture, getting some good energy on them. I'll pan out here in just a little bit, give you guys a little bit more of what that looks like. But I'm just going to drop in some of this value here that I mixed up that I really think fits. And I'll show you guys a little bit more here in a second. Yeah, we are getting there. Starting to come together. And yes, Michelle, I agree. I think painting is very therapeutic. And it's very beneficial on so many levels. And if you haven't been painting in a while, Pick up those brushes, pick up those pencils again. Or if you've never done it, come by and paint with us. Don't let it stop you. Come by and paint with us. Or paint on your own. Grab a sketchbook, grab some printer paper, have a go. Art is so beneficial for everyone. And I think it's a shame so many people get a chance. If I had again, I mention this all the time, if I had a nickel for every time somebody said, I can't do it. Well, I can't draw. I think you'd surprise yourself. Most of the people that come in here for our 2-hour oil painting exploration sessions, they lose it. They go, I couldn't believe I did it. I had no idea. And that might just be you. Who knows? Maybe you pick up a hobby you didn't know you were going to have for the next 50, 60 years, maybe 10 years, 5 years. Or maybe it's just a one-time experience. You come in and you go, oh my gosh, I had no idea. This was blast. This was one of the greatest things I've done. And even if it's just a one-time experience, art can change your life. Don't be afraid to just experience it. So again, if you're just joining, I'm working in oils on canvas. I'm working through a grisaille, or what's called an underpainting. And I'm probably going to be wrapping up here in just a short little bit for today's session. Really working through that. We're getting there. I've got a spot here that I want to tighten up. But again, some of this tightening up will happen over time as I continue the painting. Some of it will tighten up as we continue to progress. So I don't want to get too hung up on all the little bitty details right now, because I want to continue the piece. I want to get a lot of paint down. I want to continue those value studies, so that way the piece is unified. So I'm going to drop in some things here that I noticed. Well, guys, I'm so grateful that you guys decided to jump in and paint with me today. That's probably where we're going to wrap up for a little bit. I'll pull the camera out. Oh, Patsy. Oh, you are so kind. Oh my gosh, I love you to death. Thank you so much for those wonderful, kind words. I really enjoy getting to share it with everybody. I enjoy getting to share it with people all over the place, other artists, people who wish that they could be artists, which you can. So get your paintbrushes and your pencils out. But I'm really grateful that we get to share this at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. If you haven't given us a look, follow us on all of our social media. You can see us. We're going to have other instructors, guest artists. We're going to have a lot of stuff going on here. Our classes, our new rounds of classes start in January, our 8-week sessions, as well as our 4-week intro to art sessions. But with the holidays here, guys, get a chance, bring your family out, come paint with us. We have family exploration sessions that last 2 hours where everybody leaves with an amazing painting. We've got 2-hour oil painting exploration sessions where you get to do a creative landscape that maybe you thought you never could do. But for today, I've been working on my personal painting here, which I'll get the camera. I'll go ahead and pan out before I end the session. Going to be wrapping up the session here. If you have any last minute questions or comments, please share them with me. I appreciate you guys so much. You guys are absolutely wonderful. Sorry for the look here. We're going to get this so you guys can kind of see the whole piece. I'll step away for a second so you can see that this is where we're at. And then if you want to take a look, I'll pull up for you guys so you can see how the piece is coming together. And then I'll step back so you can see this is a nice big 30-inch by 40-inch painting. It's pretty large. I'll show you some of the details for those of you guys that maybe didn't get to see it earlier. We're really working through that face, really getting some of that done. Sorry for my chest and armpits there, but making sure you guys can see. And so this is what we worked on today. So we got the feet kind of wrapped up in the grisaille. I'll come in a little bit closer for you. You can see some of that brushwork, some of those details really coming in there. And then the pants. This is what I was working on. I was trying to stay nice and loose with it, not get too overwhelmed with it, but really kind of get that going. So that's what we've been working on today. If you have any last minute questions or comments, please share them with me. I'll put this back up here. See, I say I'm going to jump off, but then I get overwhelmed and I get so excited. And then I want to just keep working. And that's the good thing about no longer having honestly, that's one of the great things about no longer having the studio in the basement, having actually here is kind of forces me to stop and get to go home and tuck the kiddos in bed. But I could probably keep working on this for so many hours. It's so exhilarating and fun. But again, thank you guys for joining in. We'll probably go live again soon. We're going to try to keep kind of doing this, especially through the holidays, as many people are tuning in and hanging out and watching and having a good old time. But thank you all so much for joining. We're so grateful for all of your support at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. I'm Seth. I'm very grateful. I'm the lead instructor and one of the co-founders, and so incredibly grateful for everything you guys have supported and shown. Please like, subscribe, and share. We go live quite a bit. We share a lot of different content pieces. So if you get a chance, give us a like, subscribe, or share. Thank you for all the comments and everything else. We're so grateful. If you ever need anything, please let us know. We're happy to assist any way we can. I appreciate you guys so very much. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll see you again next time soon. Take care.